I'll just suck it up.
You have, Todd, for the budget and the capital improvements, we're not approving that, we're just listening today.
Just discussing. Next month is when we approve it.
Do not have a quorum on open for finance.
We do, for this one, yeah.
Okay.
Brooke.
For finance.
Rob's on.
Oh, okay.
We have Jonathan Strauss on there.
Oh, okay, I didn't look up. Okay, Colin, let us know when we're ready. We're ready. Frank?
Welcome to the October Finance Committee meeting. Is there, you want to take roll call, please?
Sure. Frank Facciano.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
Here.
Robert Brooks.
Here.
John Hayes.
Here.
Ron Heckman. Larry Hamburger. Mike Sterschik.
Here.
Jonathan Strauss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any public comment?
No, sir.
No public comment. Then we'll go move right into the approval of the September meeting minutes. You all received them. So Mike, motion, Paul, second. All in favor to accept? Aye. And then we will get the excellent September financial presentation.
Don't steal his thunder.
Huh? Yeah, sorry.
Wow, I don't know if I can handle that introduction. Good morning.
Morning.
Go through September financials. Always start off with the traffic. As you remember, we talked about traffic picking up later in the year, and you're seeing that in September. That was our best September since 2004. So we're pretty much on par. You'll see it in the next slide. On par with where we were last year in 2019. You can see that down there, 687, 693, and 691 for 2019, 2022, and 2023 year to date. So we're pretty close, within 1% of all those 3 years together. But again, driven by Allegiant, 367K. We're becoming a lot more Allegiant basis, obviously much more than 50%. And the bus traffic is doing well as well. You can see the numbers over here. Legacy traffic is still something that we want, and we hopefully will come back soon.
Todd, any concern about the Allegiant ratio?
I mean, you take whatever traffic you can get, but obviously we want diverse traffic. We certainly want the business traveler. Anybody who's in business knows that not all customers are the greatest customers. Some customers give you a bigger margin than others. So we'll just leave it at that. Talking about our load factors, again, you can see where we were in 2019, 83% and 87. So we're using the seats that we have with pretty good load factors, and you can see what's going on with the bus. This doesn't remember, I think we started in July, was it, Tom, with the, on the American inside the checkpoint, inside the terminal. A 6-month trial period, isn't it, Steve? 6 months trial period?
Correct.
So in theory, United will be, sometime early next year, maybe they'll be doing something similar. Same thing I just kind of mentioned, kind of seeing what's going on. You can see 2022 was actually our best as far as year-to-date traffic through 3 quarters. But, 2019 and 2023, you can see it up there a little bit if you haven't seen it. And over here, you can see that obviously that September number was a pretty good one. But go ahead, you look like you want to say
No, I
something.
had one question. Melbourne comes online in November?
November 17th.
November 17th.
Always compare ourselves to all airports. You can see that predominantly the bigger hubs are getting a lot more seats. They're getting 38% more seats than they were in 2019, but they're not using all that throughput. On the other hand, we've lost 11% of our seats, and our ratio is better than it is for all airports. Again, compared to our peers, same size as us, kind of same situation as us as far as proximity to hubs, you can see that we're doing better than them. So, but they are catching up a little bit there. Look at the month of September. We did not use any cares. I know Paul loves it when I say with it when I don't cares. I'm just going to call that the Paul factor. Who cares?
No, don't call me out.
But you can see we had a budgeted loss in there but we actually had a really good month. 333,000 net income and no cares. Obviously, some of that is due to the fact that our expenses were lower because we have not been at that full budgeted staff number that we've been talking about for a while. Again, here, looking at what's going on overall, one of the things you can see is we had a budgeted number of 1.4 with cares through the first 9 months. We're actually double that without cares. So that's a pretty good ratio there. That 2.9 versus 1.4 without cares is pretty good. Again, you know, obviously we still have a positive number at full staffing, but you know, it does kind of say we're doing better than we expected, and it kind of leads in some of the strategic things we're doing with cares for the next few years, and we'll talk about that in between now and then some of our budget discussions. Projection here is where we are. That's where we expect it to be for the year, 2.1. And now our projection at this point through September, the latest projection shows us about 5.1. The biggest one of the big differences is we are not going to take nearly as much cares. We're going to push some of that cares into next year and into 2025. Again, I'll talk about that some more. I think our last draw we have for this year is 350,000. Originally, I think it was 1.1, somewhere around there? 1.1 that we have left over, so we're going to use about 350,000 of that because we've been doing so well, and it is a strategic move, as we'll talk about a little later. Again, streak, love the fact that we're 9 out of 9. That's a good thing. Maybe we'll beat 2019 and go 12 for 12. Always show our top cost centers, and the interesting thing is if you go through 9 months, 3 quarters, we are, without cares, I think I mentioned earlier, we're at 2.9. You can see where we were last year, 3.3 without cares. And in 2019, obviously there was no cares, it was 2.6. So you can kind of see, even without care, we kind of come back to where we were pre-pandemic. But the mix is a little different. And I always want to point out, especially as we go into budget season, number 10 and number 11 there. What are our biggest cost centers around here? Airfield and terminal, that's where most of our costs are. Those numbers are negative. When we talk about our rates and charges, they are the most subsidized, where we're using most of our CARES money to kind of keep our rates suppressed because they are high. So, but again, you can see that parking and some of the aviation lease pay for some of those things down at the bottom. And non-operating income, I'll give a shout out to our finance folks who've been really negotiating with some of the banks to get us some higher rates on some of our CDs that we have and some of our bank accounts. So we've been negotiating behind the scenes to get that number a lot higher. So that helps us out a little bit too as well. And again, top number up there, obviously some of that is attributable to the winter. Some of that premium rate we didn't have to play because of the mild winter and lower headcount than we had budgeted because we did have a pretty good headcount as far as budgeting. Net interest I mentioned already, and you kind of see what's going on down there. Contract services, some of that is related to some of the demolition that we deferred. Cost of fuel, some of those other things in there, you kind of get a feel for what's going on. Again, the month of September, pretty consistent with what's been going on most of the year. Personnel versus last year up pretty significantly. Non-personnel up pretty significantly since last year. However, we did have a pretty robust numbers in our budget, so we still got some margin to keep going. Always show our head counts or employee counts. I know this is the Justin chart. He likes this in the next one. But we
Feeling
have,
like you're targeting me and my boss.
that's only the people on
Can I
that
file a
side.
complaint, or how does that work?
Why don't you file a grievance?
All right, I'll file one.
But you can see there, our full-time employees, you know, and I think James talked about that last time, that full-time count has been pretty steady, but we've increased a lot of our part-time. But one of the things, when you look at our turnover, full-time employees, we have very good ratio as far as keeping our employees for full-time. part-time, just the nature of the beast. They're just, they're in and out of here a lot, but our full-time retention is very good. And you can see that long-term, that people come here, and they might have a few complaints, but overall, they like it here, and they continue to stay here.
If I remember correctly, that's about as close to budgeted head count to actual head count that I've seen in a long time.
Correct. Yes.
Something to keep in mind when we do the 24 budget.
Well, we'll
We
talk
don't
about
have
that. We'll talk about that, so it's coming up. But
Okay.
again, I always focus, and in my head, just to get everybody clear, is two numbers, and I have this discussion with a lot of our directors and managers through the year. Two numbers I really care about on the budget are full-time employees, that's a not to exceed those numbers, and then we have hours. Because we have so many part-time employees, you can do that with 3 or 4 or 1, just can't kick over into, because 4 part-timers for the same hours cost you the same amount as 1. But once you kick into the full-time, costs go up significantly. And again, I won't call it Justin 2, but kind of breaking down the departmental information there, you can kind of see what's going on. That's just a snapshot. And then we talk about our cash, and now you see a lot of that yellow there, and that's kind of like what we see as we go into the 2024. So a lot of these things are changed based on our preliminary numbers of what we see for 2024. That's why there's a lot of yellow, and that just changes from last month. You can see that 127, number 9 there. That is our current debt service that we're paying for the connector on the 15 mil. I just made it a steady 127. It does go down slightly each month, but I just made it a consistent 127. And then you can see there, even on our debt service this year, number 10 in December, that's us paying back the RACME money that we didn't get yet, and then hopefully we'll get it at some point before the end of the century.
We have the debt service for Hangar 11. Where are we with occupancy for Hangar 11?
We have full occupancy. So, I mean, we talked about that right before the pandemic, remember we had that, but it's turned out really well, so we're full occupancy here, so it's turned out really well. Again, these payments, capital improvements, and one of the things that I have a credit to Tom and Ryan, in lieu of in anticipation of the government shutdown, they made sure that we got our grants earlier, because had they not done that, and it had been a shutdown, we would have been waiting, and that could have impacted our cash flow. So they were on top of that. So
It still happened.
But again, they got it early, so it's good to have it in the bank while people are arguing. You got it in the bank.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see down there. Now, one of the things that changed, that's why that number jumped up so much, is you remember early in the year, we had kind of a reserve for future debt service. I think we've had it for the last couple of years. At this point, there is no more reserve for future debt service because we're paying the full debt service at this point, so there's no need for it. So that's part of the reason it jumped up, and I think some of the things we talked about with some of that extra early money. So some of that's timing. So you see that jump going down there. That is because we got some of that money early, and then we're going to have to pay it back down through here. But 74 is our early estimate. And a lot of this stuff, you'll see as we talk about the budget, is going to be the same, pretty close to the same numbers. It's just some minor tweaks as we finalize it. But, we were 69,000, now we're at an estimated 74,000.
For 2 years, if I go back 2 years, that was 59,000?
It was 59 and 22, yes.
So we're at 25%.
And now,
combined in 2 years.
you know where I'm going. We think alike then.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going. We'll talk about that when we do the budget. But you can see here, going out to that we're going to be well above the 60-day number, which is a number that we never ever want to go below. I have my other numbers that are a little higher than that, but that's what we said from a board perspective. Any questions? Good month. We should keep it light. And
Good. Okay, motion to accept that's John.
Second.
Mike, all in favor of accepting for presentation to the board? Say aye.
Aye.
All right. Budget presentation.
all right, and for a few of you that are new, we kind of give you kind of the heads up of what's coming for next month, where we are, and we're pretty much wouldn't say we're finalized, we're pretty much like 95, 96% done. It's just kind of fun. We have to kind of go through some of the final numbers, but you get a pretty good idea of where we are and some of our assumptions. And the assumptions are key, obviously. You know, I always talk about our vision. It's nothing overly sophisticated, but we always want to be financially responsible, strategic, and manage expectations. The last two, you see it down there. You know, we keep talking about 2026. You know, we have to make sure we can keep going without missing a beat in 2026 when there's no more cares. You know, we don't want to just say, oh my God, there's no more cares. We got to pull back. We want to keep moving on. And the other thing in 2025, we have to, at the end of 2025, we're going to be refinancing our debt for a 2015 bond. So you got a lot of moving parts coming up, and we're trying to manage as we go forward. And manage expectations is just kind of making sure that everybody's on the same page about where we are as resources, because no matter where you are, some people think you have more, some people have you less, but you all got to be on the same page. And goals that go along with that, obviously, we want to make sure that we're managing resources and good stewards, but we don't want to sacrifice safety or any of our long-term vision. Number two there is usually just to meet the debt service coverage, which is 1.25. But we want to make sure we can do that, and we've talked about this a few times, when there's some cares, kind of thinking ahead, and that's without cares and some of these one-time and incremental expenses that I'll talk about a little bit more. And we always want to continue to invest in our organization, people, and infrastructure. That's where the money goes. It's one of those three. It's always going into one of those three buckets. And this is kind of the assumptions that go in there. Revenue-based budgets, I'm sure most people that do budgets go, oh, why do you even have that up there? Well, was time way back when we did an expense-based budget because we didn't have enough money. So we almost had to back into a revenue number. Not ideal from whence we've come, but it is a revenue-based budget, so there's money behind it, and not sitting there going, oh, please come in. You know, we really a revenue-based budget. Residual ARPA grant funding for 2024 is 2.7. Originally, we had thought that it was going to be about $2 million for 2024 and then $1 million in 2025. Because we were able to push back because this year's going a little bit better, it's 2.7 for next year and 1.7 for 2025. 6 cargo flights all combined. You kind of see what's going on there and some of the budgeted assumptions. You can see the operations there that kind of fuels the engine. Then you can talk about, I think we mentioned this earlier, about the Allegiant and our percentage there. So you can see, you know, when we were in 2019, 37% of our traffic was Allegiant. Now it's 57 that we're anticipating for 2024. So it's a different mix. And you know, if you understand the Allegiant model, it's a high touch. It's a high touch, low cost model. Those folks need a lot of assistance. There are a lot of wheelchairs, a lot of those kind of things. They need that high touch, high cost versus some of your business travelers that are much more experienced, and they usually give you a bigger margin. When we talked about that diversity, that's why, even though you have the same amount of traffic, it's the mix that kind of you have to be aware of. Kind of some there, we have that number 6 is kind of our preliminary number. We just put in 8 that we thought we needed for both of them. And then some of the other things are per our agreements. Number 8, you know, we have halfway through the year put in something for July or parking rates, which haven't been increased in a while. We're just trying to get some expertise on what's the best way to do that, so we can do that in a way that doesn't lose some of our business, and that's particular expertise that we're working. We have no increase for Uber and Lyft in the rates, but obviously we're going to try to get those. We just don't have them built into the budget.
Todd, on number 6, the landing apron fees terminal rates.
Yes.
You know, you're projecting 8%.
Yes.
Are those contracts yearly with those vendors?
Yes.
Yeah, they're yearly, calendar year.
Mm-hmm. Every year and it's really January 1st, it's really January activity for the airline, so it's really billed most of the time in February. So it's based on their January activity. That's when usually it kicks in.
Right, okay. Just, I was curious on the yearly part or if it was multi-year.
I mean, we give them for a year, I mean, and then we renew them, but in essence, there's really no contracts. They can most of these airlines can leave on 30 days notice. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of, we give them a year's rates, here's what it is for 2024.
Right,
and we usually have a nice meeting with them and explain this, and they tell us how excited they are to be increasing rates.
When's the last time we did a market survey on landing fees and?
We do it every year. When we do our benchmarking, we always do them in there. I mean, our costs are high. We know that, and particularly on the terminal side.
And it's not a level playing field, but you have other airports where municipalities
Yes, it is.
pick up a portion of the fees.
And that's part of our challenge, for us. So it's kind of what John's point that he made up earlier, and I think this is really important. So the last, I think I current at 282, but it's 287, which was a 19th payroll and use payroll. And then there's a September census. I wanted to point out the difference. So because we have so many part-time employees, we have some employees that don't get a paycheck that are on the census that we're holding a spot for. It's just the nature of the beast because they're part-time. So you can't, if somebody's on leave or something like that, you can't take away their position, but they didn't get a paycheck. So, but look at the hours there number, and that's why I always call it the FTEs. But those annual hours are about the same. So even though you had less people in the payroll, it's pretty close to the same amount of hours. So that means the people that were here were doing more hours. That's when we talk about these part-time. Remember I said that before. It's like, hey, if I got 10 people and I got to get, 80 hours, it doesn't matter if that's 4, 2, as long as I don't go into full-time category, it's going to cost me the same amount of money. And then look at our budget there. Even though, we had a lot more full-time, it's not as far off as it looks there. Because again, you have to cover the hours. The engine has to run. It's just you're covering it with probably more part-timers and overtime and some of those things. But so what happens is if you hire those people, you'll probably cut back on some of the overtime. And trust me, they hate it when I send out the overtime reports. But it's just kind of like we got to manage the ship as best as we can. And we're trying to get people that fit in and to some of our particular positions that are harder to find because of some of our challenges. But it's not for lack of effort. But you can see, and even when you go to 2024, you've got more positions in there, but the hours aren't going up a whole lot. And you got to remember, part of that is just the connector. You've got a lot more things you've got to manage at this point. So, again, when you think about it from a management perspective, can't go over 168 full-time. It can't happen. And you can't really go over 499 hours. Can't happen. Can't happen. So however that gets managed, and each department's a little different. And you got to remember, we're 24/7. We talked about full-time. I mean, it's, when you're dealing with some of the 24-hour coverage, split shifts are hard. When you need 24-hour coverage, even if you get a full-time person, that person doesn't want to come in for 4, then come back later for 4. It's just harder to do. That's part of the reason we have so many part-time people, because nobody really wants to do that. We are 24/7. Go ahead, John. I know you-
Well, the budget, the challenge comes in the 24 budget. We're going to be close on headcount, which we've not been as long as I've been here. That's going to significantly impact the cushion we've had in our financial performance because an awful lot of our profitability over the last years is the fact that we couldn't get to where we wanted to be
And now we're
on the
there.
personnel side, but we budgeted as if they were here.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So again, it kind of gets back to what we talked about before. We're trying to manage pretty much what John just said there. Look, even though it seems like we got some cushion, there isn't as much as you think it is right there. And especially, we didn't have a bad winter last year, but I don't know how lucky we'll be this year. And that impacts, obviously, how we start off the year. Steve, don't get too excited over there. And then kind of breaking them down by, by department. I know the Jason, exciting there, stuff there.
Can't even get my name right when you're making fun of me.
I know. I wanted to talk about it. I wanted
I'm
to
just
call
saying,
you.
if you're gonna throw blows, man, you gotta be more precise.
I'm gonna call you.
Hey, Jordan, let's not,
How about I call you Air? Okay, Mr. Departmental, how about that? All right, Justin, anyway. But you can see there, our assumptions are, we have all our CBAs, we're gonna follow those, and we have 3% in there for the non-union. All of those other things are pretty much what's in the contract, and what we've been doing along. That 1% bonus, but when I talk about incremental expenses, and we did this when we did our MMO presentation of our pension, and we had the extra contributions in there for some of the defined contributions, and some of the 1% bonus. When we got to start belt tightening, those things get pulled off the table. We are in a position to give more, we do more. But when, the last thing we want to do is have to let people go, because that's a big cost. So we would have to pull back on some of these, nice to haves, to kind of take care of the folks. And then again, we kind of go with the ebbs and flows. You can see there, 15 events, 32 inches, in excess and estimate. It used to be 300. It's a lot more than 300 now. But, you say 15 events, it's, and Steve and Tom, or any of them tell you, it really depends on how that comes in. And for us, it would be better to have 3 or 4 big events than to have 30 small ones, just because of that incremental setup cost to kind of get things going. And it's, for every time you come in, it's just poof, and then you're incrementally from there.
The union contracts, the police contract is up in December,
End of the year.
End of the year.
and we're basically, what are our assumptions on that for '24?
That is built into, based on our preliminary discussions in there with them. We're pretty close to them. We'll be bringing that probably next month. We have a couple little minor things we're working on with them, but we'll be bringing that next month. 5% on the medical, pretty consistent with what happened there. That was the original assumptions. Qualified high deductible for everybody except for the Teamsters. Their plan is built in there as well. Everything else is pretty much by design. Down there, number 4, all the union contracts have kind of escalators for contribution for medical. The non-union is consistent with that. $3 more per pay. I know, I try not to get, oh my God, it's brutal, isn't it? $3 more. Oh my God, you're probably not going to eat. But $3 more per pay and $70 more per family. The numbers are, I think, for a single right now, with the new rate, it would be, wait for it, $38 a pay. I know it's brutal.
I'm just wondering how you manage a 5% increase. We always budget for a 20% increase, and sometimes we see it.
Well, I mean, I think for us, and it's really been about our strategic stuff and some of the, part of the reason, and we're seeing it a little bit more, part of the reason that we want with the qualified high deductible plan is, with some of the rewards and some of that, is the long-term benefits, where people want to take care of themselves, they get rewards, go see it. Because, the big thing you can do is know if you're a diabetic, you want to get it early, right? If you don't get it early, it's going to cost you more money and it's going to be worse for the employee. So if you're not getting your regular exams and all that stuff done, it's going to cost you on the back end. So we've been pushing that, and our number came in really consistent with that number. I mean,
We know what the increase is.
we just got the increase, but that's what I'm saying. We just got the increase and it's consistent with that. Now, for next year, they're expecting it to be 8 to 10% higher, just because of what's going on. And one of the things they've been talking about is what happened with the pandemic, but all those costs that were in contracts, and now those contracts are coming up, and all those extra care that they had to pay for because they were sending nurses to different places and doing all that stuff. You're going to see when those contracts come up, and they're coming up pretty soon. So they're going to see it on the increase coming up relatively soon.
Who's the carrier for medical?
We use Capital.
Use Capital?
Mhm.
And I'm assuming we're not self-insured.
We are self-insured.
We're self-insured? So then where's the 5% increase? What's that for?
Well, the 5% increase is on our total cost. So we self-insure, we pay, and I'll talk about that on some of our slides later. We pay them, and we are 115% aggregate. So we pay the maximum every month. And then at the end of the year, if we have money left over, we go into the next year's budget. So we fund the maximum every year. So that maximum number went up 5%.
So at the end of the year, do we true up or that just?
No, that actually carries over into next year as a negative expense because of the timing of it.
And it's a maintenance fee from Capital. That's what's going up 5%?
No, it's not, it's just the claims. I mean, because even if you say, hey, it's $100 and then our maximum is 115, if that $100 goes up to 100, that's what we're saying. That $100 is now 105, and it's still 15% on top of that. So that's part of the reason it's going up. And then obviously their costs and everything else.
And if we have money left over from this year, that'll offset any further increase over the 5%.
True. I mean, because, well, it's a couple ways to look at it. I mean, from our perspective, we're paying $115 every month. That's what we pay. And then if we get money back, that means it's a negative for next year. So our net might be 108 or 106.
Gotcha. Yep.
But, from a budgetary standpoint, we put it in there, and I put in some, and there is a number in there, I estimated number of what I think, a conservative number of what I think I'm going to get back for next year, based on what they told me through August.
Right.
And I'll talk about that in a minute. But that's a great question.
Our max exposure is how much?
115.
And
And we also have specific coverage too.
You have stop loss.
Yeah, that's a stop loss. So it's two kinds of risks that we would have. We would have the risk that all the claims go up more than we expect, that's the 15%. And then, or we have one huge claim that wallops up. So that's why we have a 65,000 specific, so we don't, that's pure insurance. So anything over 65,000 does not count toward our numbers. That's regular insurance. So we have $1 million claim, we're only responsible for the first 65. But, you know, if everybody was supposed to rack up, I don't know, $1,000 a month, and for some reason they're at $2,000 a month, that's why we have the aggregate protection, because we can only handle so much, risk. We're not big enough to kind of truly self-insure for everything.
Is Capital coming out with any kind of program that helps us control prescription drug costs? That's the biggest issue we're facing right now.
Well, that's what everyone, that is, yeah, and I think some of that is just regulation.
So is our pharmacy also through Capital?
Yeah, everything's through Capital Blue. I mean, we're using.
Medical and pharmacy, right?
Yeah, I think it's we're using Walgreens. I think it's the one we use with our selected pharmacy you can go to. But you can go to any pharmacy.
Like John said, the medical claims are going up, but it's the prescriptions that are really driving the cost.
It's a killer.
Right, the prescriptions are coming, right. We all know that. It's just kind of, you know, we have those conversations.
And with the 5% increase, that's not bad, if you're including medical and pharmacy in there.
That's everything, right. Mm-hmm. And that would be medical, we have vision in there. They're kind of one bundle we have, because we go through Benecon, but it's really medical, vision, and prescription.
Dental.
And dental separate.
Why do you use Benecon?
It's a consortium. And
I understand what it is, but
And we priced it out, and it's been better.
Really?
We did a couple of them, and they've still given us the best prices, so. Okay. And their stop-loss product is the best one out there. Everybody uses the one they use. So the stop-loss that they're using, everybody else wants to use. I know you're not a big Benecon.
I despise Benecon.
Huh?
I negotiate 2 different contracts, and my feeling on those 2 contracts is if the management teams from those areas would do their jobs, my healthcare would be cheaper there, and my guys would get more money in their pocket. But that's my feeling on Benecon.
Thank you.
Yes, I just.
Mark that as the Justin.
Yeah, please. Put that on the next slide.
I don't know.
I might have to give him a new name, maybe Jake or something.
I'll stick with Jason.
Jason, Jake? Okay.
We should have a Justin slide.
Yeah, this is Justin.
All Justin's complaints.
Yeah.
We'll be here.
So-
We'll be here all day.
We don't have time.
So,
When I write my book, you'll get
kind
it.
of feeding to what we're saying, so, you know, for new employees, because we don't know what category they're going to be in, we put them in employee child. They're kind of a middle of the road. Some of it is single, obviously, it's cheaper. Some of it family, we just kind of use the middle of the road for that. Dental, we assume 0 because, and we got that confirmed. We switched from Guardian, I believe it was in 2020, got a better plan, cheaper, and they haven't increased our rates since we've been with them.
Who do we have now?
Yeah.
Who? MetLife?
The unemployment, we self-insure our unemployment, and 2% is just a placeholder. I have to put something in there. Our numbers don't run that high, but every so often, maybe every 7, 8 years, we'll run higher than 2%. The numbers for the state, I think, are somewhere between closer to 3, but I have to put something in there. I can't put, you know, if we put our actual numbers, it's pretty low, but I put it in 2 as a placeholder. But again, most of the time, it's not even close to 2%. But again, I have to put something in there as a placeholder.
We fund that,
Yeah, we fund it.
and what happens when we don't use it at the end of the year?
But so, that's purely self-funded. So we buy in and we just pay for it as it goes.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
it's not, but again, I have to assume how many people are going to be on employment. I don't know. I just have to pick a number. And again, 2%, if you look at the state, is pretty low, but compared to us, that's actually pretty high. Kind of going back to what I said before, our turnover is not nearly as what it is. Workman's comp was a huge one that we're working at. I mean, I'm sure you heard me talk about. Last year, we were fortunate we switched up with Uconic for our workman's comp, and they came up with a unique arrangement that our current broker couldn't come up with, and it's worked out well for us. It saved us a lot of money. We were worried about this year's renewal, that they might have bought the business, but it came in at a 0, so we were happy about that. Kind of going back to what Paul brought up earlier.
So Todd, before we go to medical self-funding, I want to jump back to HSA accounts for a second. What's our usage rate on HSAs?
You say usage rate, what do you want?
How many employees actually use it?
I would assume all of them that are in the qualified high deductible plan, they're
Okay.
automatically in it.
So they are actually making deposits in, okay.
I wouldn't say all,
Money, that's, I can't get my staff to pay attention to HSA.
well, it's twofold. I gotta back up a second here.
Okay,
I don't know how many are putting in their own money.
okay,
We put money in each of their accounts, a small
Okay.
and their healthy rewards that we give them go into that HSA
Okay.
account. Now, we switched to Further, and that's worked out really well for us because their platform, you see it when you go onto the Capital Blue, so you can see your HSA right there. It's, most of the employees find it much more intuitive. They can see it to their balance. So it's really working out well. I mean, we've tried to get the Teamsters to do it. It is the best way to go long term because it's their money. They get to use it,
and it's tax-free.
and it's tax-free.
Yeah, so it goes, go to your comment about putting more money in their pockets. It's a benefit that is out there, and the number of people that actually use it is
Right.
way below what it should be.
Because if you think about it from a strategic standpoint, you're better off to fund your HSA before you do your 401k or your IRA. Because it acts the same way, except for if you have medical expenses, you don't have to pay any taxes. So you can take it out just like you would a regular IRA at 59.5 and pay taxes on it. Or you have medical expenses and it doesn't cost you any taxes. So it's from a strategic standpoint, employees should do that first, then before they do the other one, just because of the flexibility and the ability to reduce their taxes. So kind of going back to
Well, hang on, Todd, just to that point, if you're a younger person, you're not gonna throw money into your HSA, because you don't use your medical.
True.
Right? So what's our average age for employees?
It's good.
our average age is in the 40s. 40s, I used to know off the top of my head, I could,
That's getting there.
It is getting there, but like, you know, if we do have younger, like I said, my kids.
younger ones, right. But,
My kids have, you know, they don't fund it because they never get sick, they're still younger. Right?
but part of the reason they're funding it is because of the qualified high deductible. For vision and some of the other things, so you're out of pocket, you don't have to pay for it
But if
even
an
in.
employee's not using the medical to its fullest,
What I do
right?
see though are some employees, and you're right, it's probably not our younger group, but some employees who are putting funds into the HSA and never touching it throughout the year and banking it so that they have that bucket available when
That's-
they're retired or whatever.
That's a common sense approach.
Right, and again, to your point, it's kind of an education process, which we try to do.
And that was gonna be my second question in terms of the education, because it's
Yep.
the battle to get people to understand what it is, how it works,
It is.
how it benefits
Yeah,
them.
it is, and the advantage, even to your point about a young person, if you have kids, you can be very strategic with your HSA, because you can change that mid-year. Unlike other things, so let's assume your kids need braces, okay? You didn't put any money in there. You can change your payroll so that money goes in there, and then use that money on the back end, and then you don't have to pay taxes on that money. So you're basically getting a discount by funding it at that point to pay for your dental work or whatever you need. So, or glasses, or anything that you can make a decision on in the moment. Dental work is usually one of those things that people know, younger or not, you need some dental work, you need braces or any of that stuff, that's why you want to use this stuff. So it's not just for the medical, but to your point, it is an education, which we really push a lot. So, kind of what Paul brought up earlier. So, you know, at this point, through August, we had 100K surplus, and that last bullet kind of tells what happens there. So we're funding the maximum. I don't know where we're going to end up for the year. So through August, we were at 294K. So that's conservative. Maybe we end the year at 294, which is better than the 100K that I assumed that we would have at the end of the year. But that's what we have in there at this point, 100K. Okay, so if it comes in 294, to Dawn's point and to Mike's point, it's just better for us. But at this point, I got 100. I don't know what's going to happen in the last 4 points. And to give you an idea, last year we were 60K surplus through, I think, through the same time period. So, and see where we ended up for the year. So it's really a crapshoot from year to year. But again, that's a conservative number. I would assume that we're okay at 100 if we're at 294 already. But again, this is a negative number in a probably because it takes a while for them to settle up. And it's really when we get the cash, we record it in the next year. So it really doesn't matter because you're always kind of a year behind in that one. And we talked about that with our accountants. And then our pension number down there, just kind of are assuming some of the extra contributions. It is pretty close to that 10% number. Then you talk about a balanced budget. with CARES funding, preliminary estimate shows a negative net income of, call it 1.4 without CARES. We're gonna put in 2.7 of CARES that I mentioned earlier. That takes us up to 1.3. You know, here you see 1369, a budget of CARES, ARPA, and it's really ARPA, because when I say CARES, it's really a couple categories. There is the original CARES, there was the Sarissa, and then there's ARPA. They're all kind of CARES, but the last phase is the last bit that we have money on is ARPA, and that's the last amount of money that we have, and that is being pushed to 2024 and 2025. So you got about 700K in both of those years. The 1.25 is our debt service number, and that includes the 127K that we talked about for the connector. Down there, number 4, is kind of one of the things we've been talking about, kind of that cushion. You know, we got 2.4 of kind of incremental one-time expenses that some or all of it would have to come off the table in 2026 to balance it out. Some of that is stuff that we know is going to go away, like bag scanning, some of the bag scanning, some of the demolition, some of the big ticket items. We have some transitional employees in there that'll help train. Some of those are going to go away in a couple of years. But again, they're in there now, but long-term, a good portion of them will go away automatically, and then some of the other ones may or may not have to go away, depending on where we are at that point. But that kind of is something to keep in mind. So even though we're using 2.7, we would still be a balanced budget if we took out those one-time expenses. You see that down there? So again, we got our eye on the ball. We know what we're doing. We just want to keep, and I keep harping on that snow because, you know, we've had a few years where we started out really bad with snow, and it's just not a good feeling when you start the year out on a bad note, nothing you can do about it. Then we talked about our landing rates and here, circle rates here. You can see there are 8 and 8, that's kind of our preliminary numbers. We've been playing around, Shane and I have been looking at some of them. And unfortunately, what normally happens is it's going to be more on the terminal side, just the way the expenses are falling. We just put 8 and 8 in a placeholder, but it's a certain amount of dollars that we need. But the way it's probably going to play out is probably more, like it always does, on the terminal side, because a lot of the additional expenses are associated with the terminal. And just as a reminder, most of our CARES, and if you remember last year, I mentioned this last year in last year's budget, our rates would have went up, I think they went up 9.9 on the terminal. They would have went up 65% had we not subsidized. Because we're doing a lot of subsidizing of those rates. So if you take, and a lot of that is the CARES. So we're subsidizing them with the CARES to keep our rates down, but at some point, we got to increase the rates. The same thing, it was about a 40% last year on the landing fees without that additional CARES kind of subsidy that we're using. Because again, like I said, most of our expenses on the airfield and terminal, so when we kind of submit those as an expense reduction, that's kind of what helps them out a lot. But again, you know, we're always trying to keep our eye on how much can they take, and we've kind of looked at some of the other airports, and we're going to keep that in mind. But some of it's just inflation and some of the things we talked about. This is kind of a breakdown of revenue, kind of where I think we'll be. This is kind of an early estimate of 2026. You can see there, I'll try to keep it short because I guess I'm running long. So the 2023 budget, so there's our buckets there. So it's really, the top number is revenue without CARES. Then there's salaries and wages, employee benefits, all other expenses, debt service, not debt service coverage, debt service, lease payments, and then whatever's left over goes into the infrastructure bucket. So you can see the original 2023 budget without CARES and without some of those incremental expenses, we had nothing for infrastructure. It would have been 2.2 in the hole, but we ended up about 2 million. If you go back to 2019, we need at least 2.4, 2 million-ish to kind of do it on a regular basis because that's what goes on. So if we were at budget, we would only had about 1.9 million. Where you can see our projection over there, our last projection says we have a lot more for infrastructure, and it doesn't necessarily go into this year. It goes long term, and you can kind of see, you can see it going lower and lower and lower. You see the ones in yellow there are really talking about the debt service that may change and the lease payments that may change in 2025 because of our debt service, we had to refi at that point. Kind of see what's going on down there. So you can see that in 2026, with those, if we kept things the way they are, we would be below at 1.18. We would be below our debt service coverage at 1.25. But if you take out, and so about, I call it 2.4, we would get to about 1.6 of coverage. But again, you can see that we do. And then look at that number up there, 2026 versus 2019. So we increased our wages and benefits and personnel by 80%, and our revenue went up 49%. That might sound alarming, but that was a strategic move because of where we were. And what's happening is, if you see on that 2.4, when we come out on the other side, when you throw in some of these incrementals, we end up pretty close to 2.4. So we're able to kind of take care of our folks, do some infrastructure, and kind of come back to the future where we were in 2019. Obviously, a lot of that increase was 2022, 2023, and now it's just kind of like the last phase of that, and then we go into 2025 and 2026 when it's got to be kind of a ramp down as far as how much we can increase. You can see up there, this is some assumptions, 5% on the employee benefits, and most of that, a higher number would be attributable to the medical. And then you said, what are those other expenses? These are kind of expenses. When you look at these things, what are the things that we can actually change? There's not a whole lot. Contract services, a lot of that's that demolition and back scanning and some of that stuff, and those are incremental. Fuel, electricity, dues and subscriptions. It's not magazines. Those are some of our IT subscriptions and some of our regular things that we need to do. Materials and supplies, insurance, payment in lieu. Love to get rid of that number. Unfortunately, can't do that. Equipment rental. Like, they're not things, so when you start looking at it, what's variable, what can you change? It's not a whole lot. So that's why we always kind of try to mind the store as best as we can.
Does the payment in lieu include the egregious?
No.
No, that's further down. That's further down. There's
I
19.
know it was included in
No.
that number.
There's 19 other categories, but
Okay.
these were the top 10, which count for 76% of the total. And this is kind of history of CARES to kind of see what we've done with the CARES. So total CARES that we received was about $18 million. 17.6 of that was really for the LNAA, and that's just a different name, ARPA, Sarissa. We got some money from the counties. All that added up to 17.6. We got 465-ish that really didn't benefit us, that went to the concessionaires. So you can kind of see what's going on there and how that strategy is. But we've been very strategic, and as you remember, the people that were here, we had some discussions of why, some of our consultants who were brought up, why didn't you use all the money all at once? We've been very strategic about how we use it, and if you subsidize them, it doesn't help us, it helps the airlines. And everybody can time. And this just takes it out further, where we end up at 231. I'm sorry for being so long, but it's a lot of information that we really need to be on top of. I don't want Jason to fall asleep.
You're working on it.
Any questions? I know it's a lot of information, but I think we're on top of it. We'll come back with the final number. I'll go with probably a slightly shorter version of this next week, just so everybody's on the same page, but you kind of get a feel for where we are. So thank you for your patience.
No, thank you.
Thank you. So the airport capital improvements programming, Ryan?
Thank you.
This one's a quick one.
Yeah, it could be brief.
That's why we like you, Ryan.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Watch out for Jason.
But some of this is relevant really to what even Todd mentioned. As you'll see, some of this might be, projects we've really talked about, but just to give an overview, folks, kind of a reminder of where we're going, why we include what we include in some of the numbers. But, I can kind of breeze through what we've done this year. Again, some of the programming history, and then some graphics that we added for some of the other airports just to kind of see some of the major projects, just for some context. And then really, how do we get into planning for next year? To say it's been a busy year, I think, is a pretty big understatement, but you can see a lot of the projects that we've completed. Again, kudos to all the departments and teams, because really all these projects touches everybody. So I'm not going to go through the list, but I think just as a reminder for the committee from what we've seen. Again, this is a big one, another phase of the runway rehab, opening of taxiway Gulf. The biggest one, I'll get into my capital updates, is actually redesignating the taxiway connectors. So actually changing the names, coordinating with ATC, changing all the charts, doing all that was a pretty big endeavor, just that alone. Queen City, rehabilitating 1533, that was a big one for the tenants and transient aircraft down there. EMAS bed rehab, I know we talked about, that was another good one that we were able to do. And then the carpet to go along with the terminal connector. I know most of you have seen that as well. Got some good feedback there. Hangar 7 restrooms we've been talking about for quite some time. To get that done was a huge win for the tenants down there as well. So again, we kind of looked at this last year as well, but again, kind of dovetailing on what Todd mentioned. Investing in infrastructure, you can kind of see the blue is LNAA share, the green is grants, and then you can kind of see where it fluctuates. This year, we're projecting right around that 14 million LNAA share. Next year, again, basically somewhere in the middle in terms of our averages, around just under 10 million. Again, just managing that cash and where we are in terms of assumptions. But you can see, you add them all up, those aren't small numbers when you look at total costs over 8 years, our share. And again, a lot of that comes from grants, which is a big reason we're able to do these projects. So I'll kind of go through all this, but really how we get to our projects, kind of just as a refresher, we have a master plan developed for each facility. Comes the preferred development concept. The concepts are developed based on forecasts and trends, which then set up our preferred development plans that then get prioritized based on timing and what we're seeing with the market. Again, what we did last year, you kind of see the colors in the images later, but orange is really projects focusing on maintaining our existing infrastructure to keep things running. The kind of light blue is to really accommodate that demand and growth with some of the projects that we're talking about. And then the purple or pink is really generating additional revenue, again, as we're talking about non-aero commercial development that helps the numbers that Todd just went through. Again, just some metrics of what we look at for some of the projects, maximizing funding, again, working with Colin and others to really maximize that, as you saw with the connector. Going through the airports, this is an image of our airport layout plan. It's very busy. FAA is very regulated on what you have to show, so it's good for me and Tom, but everyone else it's hard to really look at. So what we do is obviously identify the projects in the initial phases, and that builds upon this, which I think we presented last year, made some tweaks. But you'll kind of see, again, it has some of the projects we've been talking about, updated some time frames. You got cargo, the runway shoulders that we're doing now. Taxiway Alpha is the next big rehabilitation from the FAA. And you'll see, again, a lot of that is contingent and relying on grant funding. Moving to Queen City, same thing. Here's a snapshot of our airport layout plan. But again, you can see on the bottom there the projects that we've been working through, again, that we've been talking through in the business committee. And then again, created a similar image for Queen City. Again, the runway rehab has been completed. The lighting is scheduled for next year. And then, again, contingent on some grant funding, we're going to be looking for state funding for aviation fuel farm, which has been on our plan for quite some time. Doing some restriping in front of the terminal building where the existing fuel farm is now, to just open up that space. But again, is kind of where, and you can see again, even at Queen City, total cost $20 million. Our share 4.5 over that time are some big numbers that we have to manage to really see how we can do those. And again, can't forget about Braden. We've included this as well. Here's the ALP that was done back in 2018. As a reminder, it's just a state-funded airport, doesn't get federal dollars, so we coordinate with the state, the Bureau of Aviation. Again, new terminal building was constructed this past year. And again, updating this as well. We're going to be looking for state funding to replace and really upgrade non-standard runway edge lighting. So we're going to look at doing that. Again, we're always showing that additional hangar, but again, that's a pretty large cost. And then demolishing some of the old hangars there as well, rehabilitating the other hangar one that wasn't touched. We did this a couple years ago. But again, same thing. A lot of it, you can see it's 50% really, because that is, really can't do projects down there, large ones, without the grant funding. So that's a big component there. Real quick, just going through, how we include, contingencies in each projects, kind of go through the larger state, federal projects and the grant funded, and then we go through departmental needs and priorities that, I'll go through some of the detail at the business committee slides of where those fell that we talked before. But again, rolling into next year, a lot of the projects, again, you've seen us talking about really 9 major grant projects. Again, continuing with the runway, taxiway Delta, which is for that cargo development. I mentioned rehabilitating taxiway Alpha. It's going to get confusing for a while because we're going to be rehabilitating Alpha at ABE and Queen City at the same time. So trying to make sure we're keeping those straight. Again, we got the boarding bridges, some roadway repairs, and then you're talking, as I mentioned, Braden, the edge lighting and the farm for Queen City. So including all those in there. If there isn't a grant number, it's one that we're anticipating funding. So again, the timing changes depending on when we get the grant and if we get the grant. So just keep that in mind. 11 major non-grant projects. Again, a lot of these are somewhat carryover from last year from what we were working on that you've seen. Gotten some more information, and again, next month we'll come with the numbers to tie into the budget, the cash flow. Really, the biggest newer ones are number 20. Where's the other one I saw? And number 22, the maintenance facility fuel tanks. Looking at those design, but everything else has been on there that we're continuing to evaluate. And again, that gets prioritized as we work through it. And then just some photos of these, again, boarding bridges we've been talking about, rehabilitating, and really it's replacing those hangar 7 doors based on the design. Again, we're talking a lot about the government building demolition, but then there's the site restoration and how it ties into the proposed hotel and all those components. Hangar 9 roof insulation we've been talking about for a while, but that's become such a major project, not just in terms of phasing, but just getting that done in terms of what needs to be replaced. And then terminal modernization is continuing forward, with some of the upgrades in the terminal. I know a lot of the newer IT infrastructure really doesn't work that well with those outdated kiosks, check-in kiosks. So we're looking at that as well with some of the restroom improvements out in Wiley. That's all I had for this. Any questions? Again, just some assumptions. The numbers will come next month when we present the budget, but just to give someone a flavor.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any new business? Call for an adjournment. Michael, thank you very much, everybody.
We're rolling into business. You ready, Justin?
I'm ready.
I gotta go, okay.
Thanks for hanging out, Frank. We appreciate it. All right, the October 26th Business Committee, we'll get right into it. Sylvette, can you do a roll call, please?
Justin Grimshaw,
Present.
Ann Baum, Don Godshaw, James Irwin, Jeff Matskin. I saw him online. He's still there, okay.
Yeah.
Glenn Reedman,
Present.
Chris Worley. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Any public comment?
No, sir.
Assuming everyone got to look at the minutes from September 21st, take a motion to approve.
So moved.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ayes have the sword. And we're going to start with Steve Connors here for the bid of the rental rubber tire loaders.
That was 10 times straight.
So this is kind of our biennial rental loader award for snow removal. We put out a bid in September, and we did, we're looking for 2 contract terms starting this December 1 through March 31st, so basically 4 months for 2 years. We sent this out via pen bid. We sent out 2,300 notifications, and we also contacted 9 local rental companies. And what we're looking for is rubber tire loaders, so a 3 cubic yard loader for the parking lot. An 8 cubic yard loader is the monstrous front end loader we use out on the aprons here, and then a skid steer loader. We did get 2 responders. One was Groff Tractor Equipment, and the other one was Fully Incorporated. Both have local offices, so we have a Bethel branch and a Whitehall branch, but Groff came in at a total contract price of $141,000 over the 2 years. So the first year, really what we're budgeting for into 2024 is most of it's $68,000, and then a little bit of an increase for the following contract. Our previous contract was with Plaster Equipment Company. They were here for many years. They're no longer in business. They're actually replaced by the Groff tractor. And that's just some of the contract requirements. The service within 4 hours, the replacement within 3 days, and then some liquidated damages. So Groff is right here on Stoke Park Road. They're close. They understand that if something goes bad, they'll be here within 4 hours to either fix and then they have a replacement. So we're recommending that we go ahead and award the bid to Groff Tractor and Equipment for mechanical repair for $141,000.
Any questions for Steve?
Similar equipment, both bids.
Oh, yes, we actually specify what we require, and they both pretty much.
There's that was widespread.
Yeah.
Big difference.
It's basically 2,328 parties contacted, and we got 2 bids.
Well, and the 8 cubic yard loader is mining equipment. It's one of the big quarry machines. It's an 8 cubic yard loader will load a triaxle dump truck in 3 scoops. Like, it is a huge piece of equipment. What we need that for is the weight, because we push a 30-foot blade, a box blade, which even on the aprons takes us a couple hours to move that much snow with this equipment.
Any other questions? I'd like to make a motion.
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, send it to the board.
I'm gonna go with the commercial vehicle parking access.
And I think Tim is up on this one.
Wow.
Well played.
Things changed.
Thanks, Jason. What we're doing, that's gotta be 20, that's wrong. The parking, and this is really for the parking permit, which is from 2017, yeah, that's what I thought, that's $20. So these are for the vehicles that come over here from the hotels and whatnot, that come over and use, drop off people. So we charge them. The last time we increased the rates was 2017. I think the current rate was like $700, so this is just in line with that. Total cost differential might be $5,000. It's not a huge amount of money, but obviously we haven't increased the rates in 7 years. And the first year, we're going to give them a 10% discount because of the change, as long as they sign up early. So pretty cut and dry. Again, it's just the fees they charge, and it's really limos and the hotels that come over here and drop off people that we charge them just to come through our line.
I should know this, how do we monitor that?
People, they don't have they're not geo-tracked, so we just have to watch them. We do have scavengers that try to sneak in, and we do monitor it. But for the most part, you know who's here, and we monitor it. But it's becoming less and less, mainly because of some of the, because it used to be the taxi companies would use this. We don't really have a lot of taxi presence as much more Uber and Lyft. So that's why I said the budgetary impact is very small. It's about $5,000. With the increase, it's going to get you about $5,000. But it just says, hey, everything costs more, and we need to do more. So, any questions?
Just curious, has there been an increase on those vehicles over the years, I'm assuming? Or-
You mean the number of vehicles?
Yeah, number of vehicles and trips.
Oh, you mean Uber and Lyft?
No, hotels.
On the hotel shuttles?
Because there's more hotels going up, I didn't know if they were
Actually,
shuttling
more
more
service.
people in it, yeah.
I don't know that we've seen a lot. I know during the pandemic, we saw a huge drop. At this point, I don't know if that's recovered back to our 2019 levels or not.
Not all the hotels are doing shuttles as many as used to.
Really, I thought it increased, I'm just,
Yeah.
not plugged into that, okay.
Thank you.
So we need a motion to approve the adjustment.
We'll move.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no? All right, we'll send that to the board.
Ryan, you want to give us our capital projects update, please?
Thank you, Justin. Okay. So we'll run through our typical updates further down. Now that we're at the tail end of starting a new quarter, we're going to some of those departmental projects that I mentioned previously. Here's where we are with runway 624. Again, not much has really changed from last month, but really they're working on the north side of 624 on the shoulder construction, which kind of shows some photos in a minute. We finally got the final invoice, so we're reviewing basically the draft closeout currently for this package, sent to the FA to get our final payment and get that closed out hopefully for the end of the year. Package 4 has been completed. I mentioned previously about the taxiway designations that was completed. Taxiway Gulf, again, was completed. They're doing the final markings on this area 30 days after paving next week, and then just doing some final punch list items. But again, going to start working on that closeout for the end of this year as well. Package 5, again, that's the shoulder work. You can kind of see basically what happens with the shoulder work is contractor comes in, paves, and then this large machine on the right basically cuts out the conduit for the lighting cans, and then they'll come back, pave over everything, and put the new lights on top. So again, working with the contractors, working pretty well. And then we're really getting the site ready for winter shutdown come beginning of November. We've coordinated with Amazon and their schedule. They're really the biggest driver. Having a lot of flights overnight, which doesn't make working in that area very conducive. So they work with us to get as much as we can done in the summer, and then basically shutting down. So we may be able to get a couple more weeks out if their schedule wasn't there, but we kind of plan for that to start back up next spring. But just to make the committee aware of that.
So, Ryan, that's kind of interesting because I've never really thought about the Amazon flights overnight and how it impacts construction.
Yeah.
But they've been cooperative.
They have, and we have a good plan, with our ops department. So basically, they can utilize 1331 as long as we don't have any adverse weather, really if it's wet. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we coordinate, they can keep coming in while we're working. But they've actually helped with some conversations to shift their flights outside of that 11:30 at night to 5:30 in the morning.
Okay. I mean, we seem to be accommodating the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, just so it's working well. Or,
Yeah, I think it's been a good partnership and a lot of coordination, obviously. Sure. But it seems like they've tried to work with us where they can to try to adjust flight times to give us as much of a window as we can to work.
Yeah, it's a good question because we still have. We just stopped them because of winter shutdown, but we have monthly airline calls with all the carriers, cargo included. And I believe actually Amazon just has a newer rep that we're going to set up a specific meeting to talk through. Here's what's coming next year. Here's the timing. Just to make sure that their schedules are coordinating. But that's a good point. So boarding bridges, we did actually just receive a submittal package, so looking through that with our folks to get an order in November and to keep with that springtime installation for bridges 3 and 10. Again, with the site work component, working through the contract and the submittals for that as well to be prepared for the springtime installation. Again, we've been talking about this before, but in terms of the parking garage, we did advertise the RFQP for the design engineer October 2nd. We actually had 16 consulting firms attend our pre-bid meeting on October 13th, which I think was really good. Probably the most we've ever seen, even from our on-call consultants. RFQP response is due November 2nd, and then just as a reminder, the plan is to review those, come back to the committee and the board with some interviews and selection beginning of next year. But again, keep working through that project. I think at board meeting this was complete, but just from committee it was not. They finished the lower roadway repairs, I think between committee and board, so just kind of as a quick reminder there. And actually just completed some other E-lot repairs yesterday as well that wasn't on there. Demolition, again, we've been talking about. We're actually working through getting rid of the old escalators and elevator at the end of the old departure building. That was under our scope, not the connector. so we're working through that. Demolishing that decommissioned air handler unit, Hangar 7, and then the 2 properties before the end of the year. And as we kind of mentioned, even from the budget perspective, next year is when we're looking at the government building and how we kind of leave that site, just given that demolition that needs to occur. Again, here's some photos of working in the area. They basically have to take the escalators completely apart to then stabilize it and then cut it down in sections. So it's a pretty laborious process, but we figured if we're closing up the space, now's the time to get it out of there so that we can repurpose it later. Again, Queen City, this project's been done, really just working through the final documents with the FAA to work on that closeout as well, to get our final funding. So I mentioned this before, I think back in June, we presented the Q2 numbers for our departmental projects. So we had, when we put the budget in, I think about 80 projects, 82. You can see right now we've completed 41 projects. Back in June, we had about 19. So that's really kudos to all the departments. Todd and the procurement department really helping get quotes. And we actually even started a weekly, or CCC meeting, but a capital coordinating committee to really talk through a lot of these projects that touch a lot of different departments. And you can see it's been working. Again, even between now and the end of the year, there's 31 projects that, projects could be equipment, have been ordered or in process that we're waiting. Some of it we'll get at the end of the year, some will actually get next year. But then you can see, you know, again, total, back in June, we had completed about 880,000, we're about 2.4. And then you can see the light blue and the dark blue of what's in process. But overall, still under budget for this year, but just kind of an update. And what some of those things are, as we talk about, you know, we talk about a mower that I think that took almost a year and a half to get here. Our floor scrubber, Hangar 7 signs on the sides have gone up. We still have to do the front, but then that goes with the painting that we've talked about a couple months ago. As you can see, is needed around there, so we'll take care of that. And then, you know, Hangar 2 boiler, jet bridge, ground power units, maintenance air compressor. I think it replaced the original compressor when the building was first constructed back in the 70s. And then again, looking at our numbers, you can see where we fall. A lot of projects, again, you know, the top expended costs, working through the closeout in terms of getting the grant receipts and continuing, you know, even with the connector, getting our money in for there. And then this, you know, we'll update as projects come online for next year as well, so we can track those accordingly. That's it for this one. Before we move on to the connector, any questions? Okay, thank you. All right, so going through the connector, really the tunnel, but make this one short and sweet, but there's some good info here. You can see really what we've completed this past month. The biggest thing is really the Wiley elevator and escalators were completely removed. The temporary partition was removed, so now when you walk across the bridge, it's open the way it was originally designed. The temporary fence and barricades have been removed. You kind of hear they're doing some site work now to get prepared to pave next week to get that done before the winter sets in, to get the site secure and usable. You can see really what's ongoing. A lot of it obviously is in the tunnel, which we're working through. And really, you know, some of the punch lists and some of the areas, again, the tunnel finishes, and then the secure exit portals, which go at the end. Kind of see again here, just the other day, they're doing some of the site prep. The biggest reason we showed this again, I think last month, these tiles weren't in, or panels based on that angle, so those have now been completed. Again, just working through the punch list. Same thing on this side, that band has now been completed. You can see they're getting the site work prepared. Again, another picture, we talked about it, but really getting those escalators out of there. Here's the tunnel where it is now. A lot of the old equipment ductwork has been removed. The new ductwork's been installed, and, you know, obviously working through all the other mechanical, electrical, and plumbing components. Again, some more pictures of ductwork. Seems simple, but again, just to have that whole space be new, new ductwork is key. The biggest thing, I think, from last month, it looks kind of skewed on the left, but between flights, they're doing drywall in that corridor that passengers exit. So between flights, they'll do the work and then they'll get their equipment out for passengers, obviously, to come through. You can see in the enclosed space, they're doing the drywall. Some of those soft fits that we had shown for advertising, getting those squared away as well. And then you might be wondering, the blue drywall, it's actually called Den's glass. It's more of a moisture-resistant drywall that we use in case there is water infiltration in the tunnel. Behind, basically, it's going to be the similar to those gray panels out in the connector, kind of the wainscoting. We won't have any water issues. Again, you can see where we are from last month. A lot of progress going on the tunnel. Again, overall project status about 91%. So continue to move that forward. Again, we've talked about all this in terms of the call phase 3, working through that. Again, numbers kind of talked about before, but still on schedule basically for a January timing to open the tunnel, get the secure exit portals in, and get that area back to normal. And again, just processing really the grants and the punch list is probably the biggest thing right now that we're focusing on. So happy to answer any questions.
I'm just slightly confused on the schedule, because you said we're on schedule, but the construction timeline that you showed, I don't know what, we're like 130 days over?
Yeah, so
Right, on our construction.
Right. Yeah, so from, I think we had talked about, a few months past, from the original design schedule, we're beyond that schedule, but based on all the material delays and some of those components that we had talked about before, we're on schedule in terms of what's the latest provided. So a couple of months ago was getting the tunnel done by January, which is where we're still at today.
So the delays were materials, COVID.
Materials, I know the switchgear came quite longer than anticipated. I get the exact dates. I think it was 14 months. But
It's kind of glaring that we're 130 days over schedule.
yeah.
Well,
And, and I think those are, conversations, again, we're having with all of the prime contractors, again, given kind of the market that we were in or in as we work through that completion.
yeah, but part of that conversation is there was an addendum, an alternate to the contract where we paid extra to keep this on schedule. Now we're not on schedule. And I forget what that number was, but it's fairly large. And that's troubling.
Yeah, and I think, it's something that as you really get to the end in terms of you're talking about retainage, final payments, those are components that we're looking at, again, to get the space, really get what we paid for.
Would we have the opportunity to insert more material penalties in our future contracts in regard to performance?
Good.
Something we want to consider. I think Paul's bringing up a good point. Now, there were other factors there, material delays, et cetera, but it's a big contract. So
Absolutely.
our ability to hold them accountable and for there to be a penalty if they don't hit, that's more meaningful. We may pay more attention and get things done more quickly.
Yep. Agreed. But no, that's a good point. Yeah, that's it. Any other questions? Yep.
Any other questions for Ryan? All right, any new business?
Thank you.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Okay, does anybody have any need for a break, or can we roll right into exec?
I was hoping to get a cupcake. I forgot where.
Okay. You get a cupcake while we're rolling into exec. What kind of cupcake are you getting, Paul?
You'll see when I come back. Tell everybody else.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call the October 26, 2023 Executive Committee group or committee together.
Call it a committee.
Yep, Sylvette, could you go through the roll, please?
John Hayes.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Justin Grimshaw.
Here.
Mike Stershek.
Here.
Paul Anthony.
I'm over here.
Okay, 100%
Everyone's here,
attendance.
John.
Fantastic. Do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. I have a couple of action items. First is approval of the meeting minutes of September 21st, 2023. They were circulated via Novus Agenda a couple weeks ago. I'd entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Glenn, second by Justin. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next is approval of the Florio Perucci invoices. They were also posted in Novus Agenda, and I am very happy to say that the list is short in terms of open items, which is very good to see. So I'd entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Mike, second by Justin. Any discussion on the invoice? Hearing none, all those in favor of the subject motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, next, discussion items, update on the evaluation process for the executive director and for the solicitor. I put, for those who had not yet responded, I put a final response date of yesterday. One came in under the wire. So I now have all the reviews that will be part of the process. It's the majority of the board. There are a few board members that weren't able to get the information in. So I'll be compiling that, and our game plan is for me to circulate that information to board members for review, and we'll discuss at the exec committee meeting during exec session at the November meeting. So that is the overall game plan. And we'll make sure, Mike, we work around your dentist appointment so we can make sure you're here. That's for the board meeting. Okay, got it. I understand if you eat too many cupcakes, you get cavities. Is that the deal?
Hey,
I'm cutting back on cupcakes.
Okay. Yep, or hard candies, that's true. So any questions on the performance evaluation process? Okay. Next, we have an Operation and Safety Department update by Steve. Connors, come on.
So, welcome, everybody. I thought I'd we had such a diverse group and so many people doing so many things. I thought I'd just try and get a whole smattering of what we're doing all day long and all month. So for the airport police, we've been working all summer as part of our Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission. It's a Pennsylvania requirement for municipal police departments. Doing all of our MOPEC recurrent training and also our mandatory and service training. New this year, we've started doing some training for duty to intervene. This is a new training for 2023. So we're working through getting all of our officers through that. Our K-9 unit, Jake and Mickey, they're halfway through their annual recertification in explosives detection, tracking, and patrol. And then just Shop with a Cop, we're really proud of. We do that every December, so we're just in the initial planning phases for that. And then the community outreach stuff that we're doing with the Slate Butte Belt Junior Police Academy and North Monco Technical Career Center. They're actually here today, so they're visiting with not only the police department, but they're going to spend some time over with the fire department also. Emergency management and fire really roll this group into a couple categories. Here is our airport emergency plan review and tabletop exercise. We always talk about that. We do that in August. Completed that this year on the 22nd. But really, we go over to the have a meeting with all of our first response partners, whether it's ambulance, fire, Lehigh County Emergency Management, all of our police responders. We get in a room and we actually do a page-by-page review of our airport emergency plan. We want to make sure, well, we're required by the FAA to ensure that everyone that we identify in our plan understands what we expect of them. And we also offered up for these groups to even the hospitals, EMS, Red Cross, Coroner. We actually have those folks kind of stand up and tell all of us what they can do for us. So it's a collaborative process for developing and improving our airport emergency plan. And then we identify strengths and weaknesses. The good news is every 3 years we have to do our full-scale exercise. So we go outside, get everybody here on a Saturday and do a disaster drill. And that's scheduled for April of 2024. Looks like April 27th, I think. But just an idea of the number of attendees this year, we had 93 persons representing 39 agencies. So federal, state, local, all those folks. Jennifer Bulgari, our emergency manager, kind of coordinates all this. And then, we get that together and rely on our first responders to participate. We always talk about our compliance inspection. That's where the FAA comes over here and makes sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing as under Part 139. Really grading us on our airports, how we manage our airport certification manual. The whole gamut of things we look at. We're looking at signs marking, day and night pavement. We look at what the fire department's doing. We look at the FBO for their training and the fueling facilities and vehicles. All of the training paperwork that we maintain. We just completed all of our wildlife training this month for about 130 folks. We rolling into our annual recurrent training for Part 139 for everybody else in November. But it's really looking at all of our processes, and this is not just Steve, this is the entire organization, because, Darren's group is the FBO, they're police, fire, maintenance, how we maintain. This is, just this year, just an image of the airfield markings that our maintenance department pretty much spends all summer doing. Last year, we spent about, $30,000 putting cracked ceiling on runway 13 and 31. So that's, the maintenance department maintains it. Operations identifies where the discrepancies are. And so how did we do? Well, we had 3 discrepancies that were actually corrected during the inspection. So one of them was just, fire extinguisher with a little bit of faded label here, and the gauge, although the gauge was in the green, it was working and serviceable. The gauge really doesn't give an accurate reference to the user. So that's, we were able to replace that immediately. There was a label on one of the fuel trucks that was incorrect. I'll quiz everyone in the room to see if they know what's incorrect about that, but it should say fuel shutoff, not just emergency shutoff. So an incorrect label. And then ARF did fail to meet their timed response drill. So FAA always tests the fire department to see if they can make it to the midpoint of the field, from midpoint of the runway from their station within 3 minutes. So the first truck needs to be in there in 3 minutes. The subsequent vehicles need to be there within 4 minutes. We actually missed it by 12 seconds. And it's a pop-up inspection. We don't call them up and say, hey, it's going. We all sneak around and go over to the tower, and then we have the controller pick up the phone randomly and call out the alert. So 3 minutes and 12 seconds the first time, but the second time they did it in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So corrected all the discrepancies before the inspectors left. And once again, they complimented us, this is right out of the closeout letter, but really complimented on how our airport, the appearance of the airport indicates that your procedures are effective. So do we do all this work in 1 week before the inspector shows up? No, you can't hide that stuff. You have to have it built into your processes throughout the entire year. Everyone doing the work takes ownership, and they're really proud when we get these inspections. Todd's favorite subject, so we're preparing for winter. We're trying to spend his money again.
Don't try so hard.
Thank you. Thanks.
The goal is to have wet runways with snow around the airfields. So we've started that retraining process with not only airport operations and maintenance. We had a ride along October 3rd where we actually got the equipment out on the airfield and kind of simulated a snow response. We got everybody out, whether it was the maintenance department driving the equipment. We had our airport operations out kind of working with their vehicles for their inspection processes. Our snow command, the snow boss, so getting that person out and dealing with air traffic control and dealing with the vehicle operators. So it starts now. We try and get the equipment out to kind of exercise it, to look for any failures, but obviously the first snowstorm really puts the load on it. And that's when we kind of find some of the equipment problems that we need to get repaired. Doing our inventory of ice melt chemicals, and then we actually meet with all of our tenants and stakeholders. We're required to have a snow and ice control committee, which we did at our stakeholders meeting this past month. What are we looking at? Well, I don't know. It's pretty much how it goes every year. It's an El Nino winter, which really means we may be wetter, but a little bit warmer. A little bit wetter than normal, maybe a little bit warmer than normal. But what they'll say is, those nor'easters, it's pretty warm, and then you get the cold front, and then you get a lot of snow. So we're still planning for the 32 inches of snow. We're ready to go. What happens, happens. We'll be here taking care of it. So I'll have questions.
Have any questions for Steve? It's interesting, if you go back and you look at our vision statement, we want to be the best regional airport system in North America, if I remember correctly. Our mission and our goals both talk about the safe operation of the airport in the first sentences in both sections. So, and as you see with Steve's presentation, safety is not just the work that we do up front. Wildlife management being the classic one, bird strikes can be a big issue, but also being ready on the back end should something happen. And we've had the firefighters here in the past. I hope those guys never have to do anything but respond to a training drill. But in the event that they need to respond, that they'd be ready to respond. So Steve, thank you to you and your team. That's a key component to what we do, is making sure that this airport, all three airports, remain safe and sound. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about, but even to, John, to your point, we do coordinate with City of Allentown and Forks Township. So we don't just, for the other airports, we actually meet with them on a regular basis. So those, because City of Allentown reports to Queen City, we're really not involved with initial response down there, but we have an airport emergency plan for Queen City, and we deal with the City of Allentown. So they understand how to safely operate if they should. So
Yep. It's all part of the coordination. Yep, definitely. Okay, do we have any new business for the exec committee today, or old business? Okay, I don't think we have a need for exec session. No update on the egregious stormwater tax that Mike brought up.
Nothing for executive session.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. By Mike, we're good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. See you on Tuesday